Marketers talk about content like it's oxygen, but most teams still struggle to breathe. Budgets are tighter, channels move faster, and the demand for high performing creative keeps climbing. Welcome to Inside the Blurb, where we skip the sales pitch and go straight to the value. I am Sean Simon, and today we're diving into user generated content, how brands make it both scalable and strategic. Here's how we describe Cohley on trustblurbs.com. Cohley simplifies content creation by connecting brands with a vast creator network, enabling the generation of diverse media assets. This efficient matching and management process makes engaging on-brand content more accessible, streamlining marketing efforts across multiple platforms. You can follow along and explore their page at trustblurbs.com/Cohley, COHLEY.com. Tom, welcome into the Matrix.
Couldn't have said any of that better myself. That was beautifully said. Great to be here with you, Sean.
Excellent. Love it. Love it. So let's start with the blurb that you just heard.
Mm-hmm.
How can you expand on it? In other words, like, what does that look like in practice, and what does it mean for the brands you work with?
Yeah, what it means in practice is that at no time in history have brands needed as much content as they need today. It is really, really overwhelming and constantly challenging to keep up with the content needs that they have. That's partially because new channels have emerged, like TikTok is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. Content opportunities have opened up on retailers like Amazon, like Walmart, like Target. So they're also hungry for content. Sales teams are hungry for content. E-com teams are hungry for content. Ads teams are perhaps the hungriest for content. But the problem is that content has to be really high quality. It has to be aligned with general brand guidelines, and it has to be brand safe as well. You're introducing content that's created externally, not directly under the nose of the creative director or the CMO, there is going to be inherent risk there. So what we aim to do is, with top consumer brands and the agencies that represent them, help turn content, when I say content, photos, videos, product reviews, turn it from a real pain point into just a bona fide strength for them. So we want to be their content engine that powers every single touch point that's critical throughout the consumer journey for brands as they interact with the consumers.
Excellent. So when should a brand start thinking about working with someone like Cohley? Like, at what point in their journey does it make sense?
Yeah, we're certainly not a spot solution, and we're not an inexpensive player in the space. Tend to be a more premium type of offering that's very well suited for sort of mid-market and enterprise consumer brands, and again, the agencies that represent them. If a brand is sort of sub 10 million a year in revenue, then it's likely that they don't necessarily have the team, the resources, or the overall volume of content need to where they've really felt this pain point. Their spend levels on paid social acquisition aren't quite there. The investment in retail channels probably hasn't quite matured, and their needs are going to be a little bit more limited. There are great solutions for those brands, and we're always very friendly, always try to offer resources, help as much as possible. It's not that we think we're better than them. It's just that we very much we understand the market really well and who we're best suited for and who has the most success with our offering. And we can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah, totally fair. So on a Blurb's page, we have a what makes you remarkable statement. And yours reads, and I think this was written by you, Cohley builds software that enables brands to connect with influencers, photographers, and videographers to produce authentic and engaging content that propels the brand's growth. Cohley is built by innovators and team players who want to change the way brands create content, all the while having fun doing it.
Oh, that's nice that I said that.
It's got some nice heart to it. So what does that mean in practice for your customers and your team? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, so from day one, we've always had a little bit of a different take on this space. So we entered the world of user-generated content sort of via influencer marketing. So my co-founder and I have a background in sort of early UGC, where we were helping brands at a previous company, helping brands find photos primarily that ordinary people were taking on their behalf. Around the time that company gets acquired, we see influencer marketing becoming this like table stakes, highly successful strategy for brands. And through, our shared experience at this previous company, we were like, these influencers are creating really high quality content that brands are are going to need more of. And we believe that this space is going to continue to grow. The world of user generated content, but really it's just like brands' overall need for content, their willingness to incorporate content that's not created directly by their team. So, we come into the space with a slightly different perspective, an obsession with content, with helping brands tell really authentic stories. And then, from there, as we know, a startup pivots 100 different times, and we're essentially trying to solve the same thing that we were way back then. We've just continued to introduce various content offerings so that we can meet client demands where they are, and again, go from being like a point solution. We do short form UGC video to, oh wait, now we can power your influencer campaigns. We can do professional photography. We do product reviews. So I think partly as marketers have had fatigue around having all these different platforms up, we've aimed to try to be a little bit more of a one-stop shop and do everything best in class, as opposed to just piecemealing things together.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's more than a
Yeah.
platform. It's really about, how do you make content energizing, right? How do you and cohesive, right?
Yep.
And by not being a point solution or a project-based solution, you can learn and iterate rather than just kind of complete a brief.
And different channels call for different types of content, which of course requires different types of creators who have different core competencies, different skill sets. So what works with video review on Amazon, it's obviously a much different video than something that's sort of aspirational top of funnel on TikTok.
Okay. Let's talk competition, because every vendor on Blurbs has an opportunity to list their direct competitors because it creates clarity, right? And the reality is, if you're on Blurbs, you're comparing vendors. So don't shy away from it. Take it head on. Find the best clients for you, right? I think you have that same philosophy. But on your list, it includes Billo, Creator IQ, Grandskeepers, Kale, Later, Incense, and Symphony. I'm not telling people anything they couldn't find on your page. So when buyers compare you to those names, how do you help them understand where Cohley fits and what truly sets you apart from them, and when they should work with you versus working with them?
My answer to this has changed a little bit. I used to talk a lot about content quality with Cohley and how that's leaps and bounds above some of our competitors. I think the better explanation here is like how we actually get to that. The way that we actually get to higher quality content, or content that's more in line with what the brand is actually looking for, brand safe content, et cetera, is via a variety of different workflows that allow for collaboration amongst teams, a lot of data, first party data on creators that allows us to have better matching mechanisms. So we understand our creators like down to a T. I mean, it's not just volunteered information, it's information that they volunteered in chats. It's survey questions that they answer. So, we have really dynamic data on these individuals and what they can actually create and what they can deliver for brands. So that's really helpful. Collaborative tools, like I mentioned, huge. AI is becoming a differentiator for us, as cliche as that sounds. We're able to do things that are actually extremely valuable for our clients with AI, where the system can start to learn that brand's preferences, what they like, what they don't like. It can actually flag. We have a tool called AI Asset Analysis. It can flag anything within the submitted creator content that's counter to the non-negotiables in the brief that the actual team has laid out, sort of allowing the ecosystem to like course correct itself, and allowing brands to scale, because we're talking about, with our most active clients, we're talking about thousands of assets that they may be generating in a given monthly period. So so it's very, very high volume, and it's hard to keep up with, hard to manage. So if we can have AI come in and streamline these things, that's critical. And I think on the quality piece, thinking about it from the other side, because I hate to use like how long we've been in market as a selling point, but what that actually means for our clients is that after 10 years of doing this, we have a lot of industry wherewithal. We've attracted, our more than our fair share of top brands, which then tends to act as a magnetic force for top talent, top creators. And those two things kind of just create like a network effect that ends up being highly beneficial to the client in their quest to create really great content at scale.
Yeah, I think being around the while makes sense. It makes you wise, right? It's just like getting older, we're wiser.
Wise, and again, there's just like benefits that start to snowball over time. So That in and of itself is not valuable, but what comes with it, if you're executing well and you're innovating, is very positive.
Yeah, true partnership. All right, let's talk about a few of the claims that are on your page. This says a lot about how you operate, right? So the first one is Cohley's dedicated customer success manager provides strategic support, maximizing your content investment. So tell me about that relationship between the customer and the customer success manager.
Yeah. The customer success team I'm not shy about saying this. They're my favorite team at Cohley because they're the connective piece between the product and the client, really. And they kind of bring everything together. They're like backbone of the org. They are extremely well versed in content strategy as it pertains to different channels. They're very good at being able to take success that they had with one client and for one specific use case or within one specific vertical and parlaying that success into more success for similar clients and similar use cases. So they're great there. They're also just, I mentioned this in my initial blurb, but they're just a really friendly bunch that are just great people to know and to work with day in and day out. And I think there's real value in just like having really good people represent the company and people who really care about what the brand is trying to achieve. And that's that goes a long way. So I think the counter to, or the bad side of AI can be more automation, less relationships, more chatbots. We have sort of gone the other way in the sense that we think that human relationships are critical. We still visit every single one of our customers in person every year, which is something I'm proud of as a team. So we actually know them. And many times the way that we'll start working with a new client is someone who used to work with us at a previous company goes to a new company and they're like, hey, like building out my tech stack, or I have this need, I'm going to go back to Cohley because sure, the platform's great, the value derived is great, but the relationships also matter and carry through.
Yeah, it's so important. It's really about the partnership and not just here's some software, go to work.
Totally.
The next one, Cohley creates more diverse content than the competition, including UGC influencer activations and professional photography. So how do you maintain that level of variety?
Yeah, diverse in really every sense of the word, but what that's referring to there is these different types of content that we can help generate. So I mentioned how content for Amazon specifically is very different than content for TikTok. But within that, there's even different levels of focus areas. Some people are great at creating unboxing videos. Some people are great at more lifestyle videos where a product is being incorporated into their daily routine, for example, or the recipes that they cook for their kids, whatever. So people have different strengths, and because we have so much data on our actual creator base and the creators themselves, it's dynamic, constantly being updated. We're able to better match those individuals with the right projects. So diversity of content that we can actually do, that also means that we have to, again, segment the creator base properly. So of the 130,000 plus creators that maintain portfolios on the Cohley platform, only a small cohort will actually see a project, depending on what the brand's looking for, because for us, it's more about like quality and fit rather than, hey, 10,000 people applied to work with me on this project. We want the right people.
How do you choose? This is just an addition to the question. How do you decide that someone's qualified to be in your network? Like, what's the standard? Do they just apply? Do they have to go through a vetting process? How does that work?
Yeah. We used to put people through a heavier vetting process. Now the vetting process is actually a little bit lighter, as counterintuitive as that sounds, because we've realized that, again, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and sometimes it's that like more raw, really human feeling content that moves the needle. And to use Amazon as an example, again, video reviews on Amazon ASINs, our product pages, are becoming more and more critical to the buyer journey. You can obviously ask Rufus, so there's this interactive component as well. I mean, people trust other people. People trust other consumers, and that's kind of like the new age complementary product review. It's not replacing what a text review is, but it's bringing to life the process of actually buying a product. What was this person thinking about when they bought it? What need are they trying to address? What was important to them in their buying process? How easy was setup? All of these those videos are all about like addressing customer concerns head on, as opposed to trying to sweep them under the rug. So all that's to say, a very normal person without CapCut or post-production editing skills can do that video. That person has a place on our platform. Same thing with like reviewing products and leaving a text review. So long as they're not wading into offensive territories or creating content with AI that's just fraudulent or misrepresentative of what they're actually and what they're claiming to say, then they can have a place on our platform. It also kind of self-regulates, right? So like brands give ratings to creators after working with them. They build up work portfolios of things they've done for other brands, and in order to be accepted into a project, they have to answer gated questions, put forth content samples. It self refines, I would say, as we go as well.
Okay. This is the third one on your page. All content generated is owned by the customer forever, eliminating worries about usage rights. So why was perpetual ownership so important for Cohley when you
Yeah, in working with, it's funny. This was our default from the very beginning, and being content first, we knew it was going to be critical for brands to be able to actually take in this content and put it to work everywhere that content was important to them. The truth of the industry is that when agents get involved with talent, they will oftentimes negotiate different rates for duration of usage or the actual type of usage. So if it's being used in an ad, it's one thing. If it's being used on TV, it's another thing. If it's used in print, that's another thing. And we are like, this is creating such a headache for brands to try to track this in their, in their digital asset management tools, or hey, this asset's performing great in our Facebook ad, but technically the usage is up now. So what are we supposed to do now? Or between a rock and a hard place, we're like, let's just remove this frustration and let's just streamline this so that brands can just remove any doubt and hesitancy and just move forward confidently with the content.
can you imagine like back in the 90s if Ryan Reynolds signed a contract with a brand when he was a nobody,
Yeah.
and then fast forward and you're the brand and you have complete ownership of those pieces to be something interesting to deal with.
Yeah.
So let's move into the sort of the case study. You got a few on the website, or on Blurbs, I should say. You have a lot more on your website. And let's take a deep dive into Zak Designs. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. And
Yeah.
let's bring it to life. So it's how Zak scaled digital acquisition with Cohley is sort of the headline. And you helped Zak produce content for everything that they do from a content perspective, from acquisition to retention and everything in between. So how did that brief come together, and what made the output so efficient compared to maybe their traditional strategy before they came to you?
Yeah. Fast growing company. So when they started working with us, I think they were in the 20 to 30 million in annual revenue type of range, and now they're well over 100. And with that growth comes the need for a lot more content. So for them, the reason I really love that case study is because we work with them to power content generation for basically every touch point of their consumer journey. So all the way from initial introduction of the brand through post-purchase retention. So they're thinking about content really holistically, and we are the engine for that content focus, that content push. They sell products like Disney themed water bottles for 3-year-olds. Like my daughter has the Moana one, she has the Snow White one, the Minnie Mouse one. Like these products are both like nostalgic for parents and the focus of so much like obsession and joy for kids. So for them, content is critical because it tells that story from an emotional standpoint. It takes consumers into like the real lives of families with kids who love these movies, or just love their pink water bottle. It doesn't even have to be Disney themed to have an emotional connection, but kids love their water bottles, and through us able to generate the content that actually like properly conveys that story. In selling a water bottle, it's not about like, well, sure, you want to say it's like BPA free and safe and all that, but you're not saying like, oh, like the straw is wide, or like it carries, this much water. Like, sure, again, great, important to know, but like these are emotional buys. Like anyone can buy an old water bottle at any store they go to, but like to seek it out means that there's like some sort of emotional connection and trust and a relationship between what the brand is selling and what a consumer is actually spending their hard-earned money on. So the content that we help them generate, tells that story at every part of the funnel.
Hey, you need different content for different stages, right? One to get them in, one to move them along. It's more technical, and maybe one for resale. Okay, so moving on to the next segment of the show. On the blurbs page, we ask vendors 10 operational questions and 10 category specific questions. So I picked out a few of each, and I wanted to get sort of more thought from you on them, if you could just elaborate on those answers. So the first question was, who are your typical customers and what verticals do they represent?
Who are our top customers and what verticals do they represent? It's funny, when I always say like you can't pick your verticals. My co-founder and I had worked primarily with fashion companies at the previous company we were at that was focusing on UGC, and we just assumed that fashion would be one of our top verticals here. Not the case. Primarily CPG, beauty is huge for us. Do a lot with vitamins and supplements. Those are really the main categories for us. Consumer packaged goods certainly being huge. Really any consumer product fashion's been tough. CBD has been tough. Apps and things like that have been tough. Not that we don't love those types of companies. Just that's who's tended to need our services the most and tended to have the most long-term success with us.
Okay. So how is customer service delivered? You mentioned it before about your
Yeah.
relationships are really important, but if I'm a customer working with you, how do I engage? What are my options?
Yeah. So the onboarding process is the most hands-on from our team. It's really where we're trying to get you riding the bike, but first we got to be on the training wheel. So let's go through the process of actually crafting a creative brief together. There's like a brief builder within the platform, a lot of different ways that we can like ingest outside materials to help create that baseline. It's not hard, but we want to make sure that it's dialed in and that it's set up to help generate the types of assets that are so important for the actual client. After that, you have the creator selection process. So you have, typically anywhere from 100 to 300 people who are very well aligned with your brief, who are raising their hand and saying, yes, I want to work with you. Here's some sample content. Here's some specs about me. Here's why you should pick me. And then we have a variety of different tools or filtration systems within the platform to help get them to the actual right creators and ultimately accept them. So once they're accepting them, then they're using an integration on the platform, typically a Shopify integration, but it can be done manually to get the actual product, assuming there is one, in the hands of the creators in a timely manner. From there, the creators then submitting content for approval to the actual brand. Again, brand is using some safeguards that they have within the platform to collaborate as a team and to lean on that AI to make sure that everything checks the boxes in terms of meeting non-negotiables. And then from there, they're acquiring assets that are stored and organized within their content libraries, can then be shared out to sort of the necessary people, the necessary teams. Sometimes it's shared out with their agency or other partners of theirs. So the job's not done once the asset's approved. Content only has value if it's actually being put to work at those critical junctures of the consumer journey. So the platform makes facilitating that very easy. But yeah, that's generally how it works from top to bottom. And creators can oftentimes, you can save lists of your favorites and things like that if you want to continue to work with someone on an ongoing basis, kind of in more of an ambassador capacity. But typically brands will save have a few people that they can consistently rely on, and then mix in fresh talent as they go.
Makes sense. So they're never really alone. They have the platform they can log into, but if they ever need help, it's there.
Yeah, we do quarterly strategy calls, hop on with them whenever. Ideally we're at a point where we, know their dog's name, have their cell phone numbers, and part of what does contribute to that is the in-person piece as well. Like being able to just like visit people and be in their office, at their local diner, at their bar. Like it brings everything to life. It like helps remind you why you're answering those late night emails or why you're grinding over strategy for a product launch or a big, Black Friday, Cyber Monday push with them. It's like, oh, these people like have aspirations. They have dreams. They're part of a team that functions really well together. Like it's just cool. It makes everything like, it just gives everything so much more meaning. So that team is very relationship driven, very strategy driven. And takes the time to actually train people up so that they can be autonomous, but with the support of really great people on the other end.
Yeah. So obviously relationships are important, but at the end of the day, it has to work, right? So what does work mean? So how do brands measure success when they're working with Cohley?
Yeah, it depends. It really depends on what the use cases are. So success really at a very basic level is, are they getting the content that they need? At a more complex level are these videos on our Amazon product pages leading to greater consumer education, which means higher conversion rate on page and lower returns? Is the short form video that we have continued to test and mix into our TikTok ad strategy, is it resonating with people? Is it well aligned with the platform? Or are we capturing a larger share of voice here? Do we see sort of a general halo effect on our sales where we may not have last click that's off the charts from social, but people are converting and they're saying, hey, they heard about you on TikTok. So all these things matter in the overall consumer journey. Consumers have a lot of choices, and the content's pretty important to that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working with a marketer, though, they probably have a tendency to fall back on those marketing metrics, right? Whether it's engagement or
Right.
return ad spend or whatever it is that they're targeting. Do they come to you and do they try and set up tests like holdout groups? We'll put your videos on some products, but not other products on Amazon. Like, are they doing things like they would do in a normal marketing?
Yeah, it's very rarely Coley content versus their other content. We don't like that test because we can generate really any type of content that they want. I mean, most of the time when we've started working with a company, they've already proved out that user generated content is successful to them. When we first started the company, we had to educate a lot on what UGC was and why it was important. Now, if we were to go forward and pitch that, people would be like, yeah, obviously. But let's talk execution, let's talk strategy. So thankfully we don't have to educate the market on what UGC is and why it's valuable anymore. Um, but all those metrics can matter. If we're talking influencer, we want to see really high engagement rate, high earned media value, strong reach. If we're talking about product reviews, we want to see that we've been able to positively impact star ratings, volume of reviews, and ultimately conversion rates on those pages. So again, it just depends on the metrics depend on what the ultimate application of the content is and what we're using as a baseline. The more data we can get on performance, the more we can feed that information back into the platform and create like a feedback.
Makes sense. Okay. So earlier in the conversation, you mentioned AI a couple of times. One of the category specific questions is how does AI enhance UGC creation and optimization?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it starts with this concept of an AI brain that we have. Cohley Cognition is what we call it. So basically, as a part of your onboarding process, you are uploading key brand materials, spiked information, guidelines, past performance data, anything that can basically tell the Cohley system, this is who we are, this is what performs well for us, this is our target audience. From there, ingesting all of that information and then kind of using that as like a agentic guide within the platform. So you build out a brief, you click submit, and it'll say, hey, based on your brand materials or based on what we know about you, you may want to tweak this information. Maybe reword this or include this blurb. Or even, down the road, we'll be able to say, like, pick these types of creators because of XYZ. We know this about you. We know they're capable of creating this type of content and it's highly likely to perform. So much that we can do to start to like guide the process and to take sort of uncertainty out of it. Truthfully, I'd like to get the platform to a place where it can run fully on autopilot and that it knows the brand almost better than the brand knows itself. Do I think that that's in the immediate future? No, because it's people just generally want to be involved in decision making when it comes to content creation. And then they want to function more like a traditional sort of like Mad Men type of character rather than like a quant trader that's totally hands off the keyboard. But I do think that marketing is heading in that direction where AI is capable of making better decisions in terms of what content to create and where to use it, how to use it, than they are. And that's okay. They just turn into overall strategists who are pointing in a specific direction, running a variety of different tests and kind of refining from there. They're the chief strategist of the lead of the orchestra rather than the one playing the violin.
Yeah. I'm tempted to ask questions about marketing automation and AI, but that's an episode all by itself. So we're going to
Yeah,
move on.
there's something about that. That's
Throughout the conversation, you mentioned places that your companies, the brands you work with, place the content that they're sourcing from Cohley. So how, or I guess first, can they manage the distribution across multiple channels, like from Cohley, or do they download and have to go have their own relationships? How does that work when you're thinking about the TikToks and the Amazons and the Yapos and Power Reviews and all these different channels that they probably want to place the content? How does that distribution work?
It depends on what they're trying to do. So we have like a Yapo integration, for example, that very cleanly takes a product review, pushes to Yapo's back end, and from there they can very easily syndicate it out to Walmart, for example. Very, very common use case. If we're talking about TikTok, you can push that asset directly to TikTok Business Manager, although oftentimes people will prefer to download it and then have their team do post-production work on it. They have rights in perpetuity, as we talked about, so they can do whatever they want to manipulate it, stitch it into more of a mashup type of video, add their own sort of text overlays, things like that. So it depends on what the actual use case is. Obviously, from a Cohley perspective, we'd like to be able to gather as much data on how that content is actually impacting performance because, again, we want that information to be able to feed the feedback loop and help them better create content that's going to perform best. But sometimes we lose that thread because they need to edit in post-production. Totally fine with us. I mean, ultimately, again, we're the engine behind all of this. The more information we have on performance and brand, on preference and behavior, the better. But the nature of content is that sometimes it needs to be edited by the team, and they want a little bit more hands-on control.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So before we wrap, can you give us an overview of how pricing works? Not necessarily the numbers of what you charge clients, but like how you think about it for each brand.
Yeah. So we're very pro pilots, which is a fairly new thing for us, but I think we realized over time that when we put our solution in the hands of the right brands and agencies, they have success with it. So if we can de-risk the decision to work with us and say yes to us and get started, then we feel confident in being able to build a really long-term, like successful relationship off of that. So pricing, another change that we've made is offering more like flexible packages that allow for a variety of different briefs and brief testing as opposed to immediately capping them in terms of how many briefs that they can run. So typically the way that a client will work with us is to get started on a sort of 90-day pilot at one rate, and then they can either opt into a discounted annual rate or continue on with a month-to-month type of subscription. That works too. But we lean on giving them more and hoping that we become as much of a part of their sort of internal systems and how they think about content and how they think about feeding these channels as possible.
I love it. Simple, scalable, and predictable. Exactly what buyer wants.
That's perfect. Yes, that's a great description of what we're going for with this.
All right, Tom, thanks for taking us inside the blurb and giving us transparency as we look at Cohley. For everyone listening, you can explore Cohley's full profile, read the Zak case study, and even ask them questions anonymously at trustblurbs.com/Cohley.com. That's the beauty of blurbs. No sales decks, no fluff, just real insights curated by experts and powered by Vinny, our AI agent who actually understands your tech stack and your needs. I'm Sean Simon, and this was Inside the Blurb. See you next time.